What's up, everybody? Welcome to the second part of the ARS mini-series. In part 1, we looked at a regular 20 card ARS submission. Feel free to check out that video. Today in part 2, something very exciting. We will look at a PSA to ARS reholder or cross-grading submission. A few months ago, Shug Nasty and I, shout out to Shug, we had this idea. What if we sent PSA graded Pokemon cards to ARS? What would happen? He chose 10, I chose 10, we sent them off, waited a few months, they came back, and let me tell you, very exciting. Some certainly quite unexpected results in there. We covered the whole thing across 2 live streams. In the first one, we went over our PSA cards, showed the grades, showed the issues with the cards, and we tried to kind of predict the grades that they would get with ARS. And then in the second live stream, we did the ARS grade reveal, and it was a ton of fun. Both of those live streams are up on the channel. If you haven't seen them yet, feel free to check them out. Anyways, today I am going over my 10 cards that I chose to have cross-graded with ARS. I'll show you the cards. I'll show you what they looked like in their PSA slab before. We'll look at the ARS grade. I'll give you my thoughts, my opinions, a bit about the ARS grading scale and just how it went. In the third part of the mini-series coming after this video, I will give you my in-depth thoughts on ARS as a whole. All the things I like about ARS and all the things I dislike about ARS. Contrary to popular belief, yes, I love ARS, but there's some things I'm not a huge fan of. So we'll reserve most of that for the third video. But today, we are looking at how PSA graded Pokemon cards were graded with ARS, Japan's toughest grading company, as people always say. Well, let's check it out. Here are the 10 cards that used to be in PSA holders. Now, we actually chose cards for different reasons. Like some cards we chose because they're personal collection cards and we just wanted to have them in a nicer looking slab. Some cards we chose because we felt like they could get a great upgrade with ARS. Maybe, aim for a 10 plus, although I didn't send those in. Shug had at least one of those, I think. But for example, get a PSA 9 to an ARS 10. That would be kind of nice, right? ARS famously doesn't great centering. There's a lot of PSA 9s out there that got the 9 because of centering. And then some cards we sent in, lower or middle grades just to test how ARS grades certain type of damage. It's a bit of science, I guess. But let's get started. My first card was the Masaki Alakazam that was initially a PSA 5. It looks so much better. Like it's night and day. It's not even close. Such a cool card. This card has slight pen indents. It has a lot of scratches. It has some whitening. It didn't have too much whitening for a 5, but it has a lot of scuffing, and it's just a kind of a rough looking card. And it did have, very importantly, it had the famous Masaki marks. So what did ARS give this card? ARS gave it the 6. So this was a really good start to the whole experiment. We got a great upgrade from a 5 to a 6. And this is one of those things where we felt like maybe this is ARS just having a slightly different grading scale. PSA, if you have a Masaki mark, it's kind of like a 6 is kind of the highest you can even get. So this card then getting the 5, it made sense with PSA. Getting a 6 is, it's nice and all, but this is just a personal collection card. I sent it in just because I wanted to have it in a nicer looking slab. But that was a really good start and interesting. ARS says on their website that, they factor in the original initial condition during the release or something along those lines at least. And so maybe the Masaki mark isn't as big of a deal with ARS. Let's see if I can get it to show. There you go. And then it's a little less noticeable at the bottom. It's still there, but hardly noticeable. Next up was the Golden Sky Silver Ocean First Edition Typhlosion Holo. This was a PSA 9, and here it is back from ARS. Same thing here, looks incredible. Now this was actually not a 9 I sent in because I felt like I could get a higher grade with ARS. I sent this in because this is a hard personal collection card. Bought it a few years ago in Kyoto before I moved to Tokyo. Now I'm back in Kyoto. But I went card shopping with a buddy, had a good time, picked this up. It's a good memory of years past, and it's a card I intend to keep forever, but it is an incredible artwork. I really, really like this illustration of Typhlosion. Hajime Kusajima, always going crazy. Golden Sky Silver Ocean in general is a crazy set. So it was a PSA 9, and it got the ARS 8. So we did get a downgrade here. And the issue with this card, initially, I think in the submission video was like, oh, it has only like one spot of whitening right here. But it actually has a few more, if I recall. Okay, there's another little bit of whitening here. And then at the top a little bit. So I think this going down to an 8 is totally fair. You know, PSA 9 is fine too. I've seen plenty of PSA 9s like this. But I sort of half expected the downgrade on this, so it made sense. Then we have the Trainer Magazine Volume 12, Promo Rockets Scizor Holo versus Series. This was a PSA 9 as well. Another example of a card that just looks unreal in the ARS holder. So this was the PSA 9, and it got the ARS 9. So this card retained the grade. Sorry for the reflection. It's the lighting setup I'm using to make sure the holo pops. It causes the label to be very reflective. In person, it looks different. But yeah, cool card. This came straight out of the sealed Trainer Magazine. I've opened several sealed Trainer Magazine Volume 12s, and every single one I opened, each Rocket Scizor had the tiniest little bit of whitening in one of the corners. There it is right there. I think you can see it. And that is why it was a PSA 9, and that's why I got the ARS 9. Although it's always a question, right? ARS has a 10 plus. That means the 10 isn't perfect. So what's the difference between a 10 and a 10 plus if this is a 9? One of those things. Well, then we have a really cool card. We get the Expedition First Edition Blastoise Holo. Unbelievable artwork. This was a PSA 7, and I actually purchased this one specifically for this experiment. I was looking for like a kind of a middle grade cool card I wanted to have in an ARS lab. And well, here it is. Unreal, looks crazy. 6 swirl on the side right there. So this was a PSA 7. It has some whitening. It has like slight surface scuffing in one of the bottom corners on the back. The front is really, really clean. Like this card on the front is near perfect. But what did it get with ARS? ARS gave it the 8. There you go. A nice little upgrade, bumped from a 7 to an 8. And, you know, I think it's fair. You can definitely see the whitening on the card, but I have seen plenty of PSAs that look just like this. So, you know, a nice surprise. This is definitely a keeper, though. I really, really, really like this artwork. This is one of the best Blastoise illustrations ever, in my opinion. Looks so good. And the e-reader, it's amazing. Next up is the Arceus Movie Commemoration Random Pack 2009 Arceus Holo. This was a PSA 9, and I actually purchased this one specifically for this experiment. So I bought it online on Medicuddy, and I looked at the pictures, I looked at the PSA scans, and I couldn't see anything wrong aside from the centering. You can see it's a little top heavy, it's a little left heavy, and I felt like, hey, this must have gotten the PSA 9 just because of the centering. Well, when I got it in, I noticed through the PSA case, there were a few, like 2 or 3 very kind of faint minor scratches on the back. When I saw that, I was like, I don't think it can get upgraded with ARS. If it was just a centering, then, you know, it could easily get the 10 if everything else is perfect, or maybe even a 10 plus, right? But unfortunately, it did have some slight surface wear I couldn't see in the PSA scan. Buy the card, not the grade. Obviously, when you buy online, it's a little difficult, but, you know, nevertheless, didn't bother me too much. Still a sick card. And with ARS, it also got the 9. So it stayed the same, and I have to think it must be those very slight scratches on the back. Let's see if I can get them to show. This is going to be almost impossible because they really were super faint. This next card is very cool. It is a Sky Splitting Charisma PSA 9 Rayquaza GX Full Art. Now, this is a sick card, and this is also one I specifically bought for this experiment because I felt like it must just be the centering. You can see it's quite top heavy, a little bit right heavy. I was like, surely this is why I got the PSA 9. And if that's the only issue, then it should get a higher grade with ARS. Very glad I picked this card up when I did. I think it's sick. It's a little bit hard to show because of the reflection, but it looks incredible in person. The texture is great. I love these GX Full Arts. They're really cool. Not all of them, but a lot of them are really cool. PSA and I went to ARS 10. There it is. So this card did get upgraded with ARS. But yeah, this was exciting. And this is, you know, again, this was the centering. Now again, the whole centering thing with ARS, I'll reserve my opinion on that for the third part of the mini-series. Well, then we have the Cold Flare Unlimited Celebi X Full Art Black and White, 2012. This was a PSA 8, near mint to mint PSA 8. Quite an interesting grade. Here is back from ARS, Black and White full arts. Just great cards, and in the ARS holder, they look incredible. They have such good texture. Love them, love them, love them. Big fan. This is a card I also bought for this experiment. I bought it together with another card that we'll see at the end. With ARS, also got the 8, stayed the 8. And if I recall correctly in this card, the main issues are primarily just kind of whitening here and there a little bit. And then, oh, there you go, I had to look for it. It has like the slightest little corner indent there in the bottom right. I don't know if the camera is going to catch it. Ooh, this next one of my favorites, or maybe my favorite from this submission. We get the good old 1996 base set Charizard Holo. This was a PSA 7. This is a card I've had since 2016. Reminds me of the good old Mandarake days. Oof, man, those were fun times, let me tell you. This is a hard PC card. I just wanted this one in the ARS holder because it just looks, a million times better in this case than in a PSA case. Very, very, very awesome card. So PSA 7, ARS 7. Stayed the same. I'd argue this is one of the nicest looking PSA 7s you've ever seen. It's got a little bit of whitening down here. And the tiniest little speck on this side somewhere. It's almost impossible to see right there. The front is pretty clean too. It has a lot of minor scratches on the back. And then I forgot when I submitted this card, when we did the live stream, I was like, oh, that's it. There's just a lot of light scratch on the back, but it has a slight indent here where another card was pressing against it. And I think that's probably the main reason why I got the 7. Either way, it's a beautiful looking 7, especially in this case. We got Tack Bolt, Gengar and Mimikyu, GX, the regular double R. This was a PSA 9. This is another card I specifically bought for the experiment. I actually picked it up in person in a card store in Tokyo. I saw it in the store. It was much cheaper than the raw card in a PSA 9, which is, it's just silly these days. Silly. But I saw it, I saw the centering. I was like, oh, this is probably a 9 because of the centering. You see, it's quite top heavy. I took it home, and then when I got it home, I noticed that there's like a tiny little white speck on the bottom corner. And then I was like, maybe it won't get the ARS 10. But what did it get? It got the ARS 10. Very cool. So this one got upgraded. And, the little white speck, it is super tiny. You can barely see it. Other than that, the card is super clean. I think this deserves an ARS 10. Again, keeping in mind, they have a 10 plus, so a 10 is not a perfect card. In theory. Although I have sent plenty of cards that look perfect to me that didn't get a 10 plus. Either way, nice upgrade. And then last but not least, we maybe have the craziest card of this submission. Not in terms of its value, but in terms of what happened to its grade. Although there were a couple crazy ones too from Shug Nasty. I don't have those here, obviously. So watch the live streams. Let me tell you, the Shug Nasty ones were pretty wild. But for me, the last one was the first edition Dark Rush Entei full art, another black and white card. This was a PSA 6, excellent to mint, I think is what it stands for in PSA. Here it is, back from ARS. Great card. The holo on this and like the texture, the way it radiates around Entei's nose, it's really good. I can't quite get it right. Oh, there you can see it a little bit. It's so good. And this was a 6. So this is the other card that came together with the Celebi. And this one with ARS, right? PSA 6. It got an ARS 9. This was crazy. Like, we couldn't believe it when this happened. So why did this get a 9? And I think there's two possibilities. A, they missed the damage. Most likely scenario. Or B, they saw the damage, but the eye appeal still being really good might have, made it a 9. So what does it have? It has the slightest little top edge thingy here. It looks like a tiny little crease. And it actually comes from the back, I think. Because on the back, if you look right there, you see how the light changes ever so slightly. There is a tiny little bend in the card. And that's why PSA gave it a 6. Boom, straight down to a 6. It has, some minor little bits of whitening here and there. A little bit at the top too. I don't think this should have gotten a 9. I know misgrades happen, but it's still like, it's very hard to see unless you hold it in this perfect angle with the lighting, right? Yeah, this was a surprise, very fun surprise. I don't, it's kind of whatever. I'm just keeping it for now at least. It's such a cool card though. And yeah, this is it. These were the 10 cards. Well, that was certainly interesting, wasn't it? Without taking too much away from my third video where I go in depth about ARS, my opinions, my thoughts, things I like, things I dislike. What this showed, and keep in mind this is a tiny little sample size, but also a lot of what we saw today can be explained by understanding ARS as having just a different grading scale. ARS tends to, or at least from what we saw today, from what I've seen in other submissions, my own other submissions, ARS tends to use the full spectrum, all grades. ARS, at least it seems like they don't auto dock cards to certain grades for a certain type of damage. If you think about PSA, right, a bend decrease, well, the highest grade you can get with that card is a 5 or a 6. That's pretty punishing. A few years ago, I graded an ANA promo Pikachu with PSA. It came back as a 5. The card looked absolutely beautiful, but it had a slight bend visible on the back. And very hard to spot. I missed it when I pre-graded the card. And but you would see it in a specific angle under a certain lighting. You could see it, and well, with PSA, with their scale, well, that got the 5, and that's just how PSA works, right? But I always felt like that card didn't look like a 5. Right? The eye appeal of that card was amazing. The damage significant, but again, very hard to see. And to me, it never belonged in the same grade as the very first card we looked at today, the Masaki Alakazam, which used to be a PSA 5. That card has indents, it has scratches, it has whitening, it has scuffing. Side by side, that card and the ANA Pikachu, they're completely different eye appeal, but they got the same grade with PSA, and I always felt like that's a bit wrong. It doesn't feel right. I don't agree with that. And based on what we've seen today, I believe that Pikachu, that's just an example, right? But I believe that Pikachu would get a higher grade with ARS. Maybe I'll send it in at some point to find out, right? Maybe I'm completely wrong, but this is just going off of what I've learned so far. Now, whether you agree or disagree with that, that's just kind of personal preference. Again, to me, those two type of cards just do not belong in the same grade. It feels wrong, and the same is going into the centering now a little bit, but I'll save that for the third part of the mini series, my overall thoughts on ARS, because there's a lot to talk about there. It's quite interesting as well with how PSA grades cards versus ARS, etc. But again, I also think that had we sent 20 PSA 10s to ARS, the results would have looked completely different. Shock sent in a PSA 10, it came back at 9. Slight spoiler, but you gotta watch the live stream. It's brutal, it's hilarious. I feel bad for Shock, but it was a pretty funny moment in the live stream. So we ended up choosing, kind of coincidentally, cards that have certain type of damage. It just ends up being graded, or it ended up being graded slightly differently with ARS, where they weren't judged as harshly on that type of damage. Overall eye appeal matters the most. And the other thing that I wanted to explain, I think this is super interesting as well. ARS doesn't have those terms. They don't have gem mint, mint, near mint to mint, near mint, excellent, or whatever, right? ARS just has the numbers. And famously, the near mint PSA 7 is kind of a joke, because most PSA 7s raw could never be sold as near mint. Let's be honest. I mean, PSA 7s, I've seen plenty, and let me tell you, they do not look near mint. If you buy a near mint card today online from an eBay seller that has pictures, it's probably going to be like a PSA 9, maybe an 8 condition, right? But most PSA 7s are rough. So those terms just get a bit confusing, and they don't really mean much. Whereas with ARS, if you just take the numbers as numbers, then suddenly all of this makes a whole lot more sense. Take the Blastoise, for example, that went from a PSA 7 to an ARS 8. Right? That card, I mean, first of all, I've seen plenty of PSA 8s that look just like that. I've seen 9s that look like that. I have a 9 that a card that used to be a 9 in my binder that looks kind of like that. Very similar type of damage or extent of damage. If you just take the ARS scale as, well, the number, a 7 is just, well, it's just a 7. An 8 is just an 8. Or maybe a different way of looking at it, if you look at an 8 as, the card has or retains 80% of its original perfectly mint state, then it makes a whole lot of sense. The Entei, the big surprise where I genuinely do not agree with the grade, and I do think they just missed the damage. But if they didn't, you could still kind of see why it might have gotten a 9. The damage is there, but the eye appeal is outstanding on that card. And so, does it retain 90% of its original perfectly mint eye appeal? Kind of, yes. So, it's one of those things. But again, this kind of comes down to personal preference. Overall, this was a ton of fun. I think we learned a lot despite the tiny sample size. Do I think it's worth cross-grading your cards, PSA or CGC? I think they also do, maybe Beckett, definitely CGC and PSA. I don't think they do tag. But is it worth sending your cards to ARS to get cross-graded? If you're doing it to make money, I don't really think it is worth it. If you're doing it, it depends on the cards you send in, obviously, but if you're doing it to have some of your personal collection cards in a gorgeous slab, yeah, why not, right? Go for it. It's a ton of fun. Shout out Alex Collects, by the way. He has done the same thing. He is not in Japan. And so if you want to learn how he did it, check out his channel. I'll link it down below. Yeah, ton of fun. And we learned a lot, and it gave me a lot to think about and more to talk about in the actual final video where I go in depth. All the things I like, all the things I dislike. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe if you have not hit that button yet. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for that. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.